Oh man, we live, baby, we live. We lit, baby, we lit. You already know we've got Vocab Malone up in the building right now.
Titans TV, hosted by Kalam EL, is a YouTube channel known for delivering debates, discussions, interviews, and lectures that explore religion, philosophy, history, and social issues. The channel often features content from Speaker's Corner in London, where individuals from diverse backgrounds engage in passionate public discourse.
So, y'all who don't know right now, right, we got Vocab Malone. I call him the Hebrew killer. Because when he's out on these streets, he does street apologetics. If you don't know about that, you're gonna need to check out his channel. What's your channel, Vocab?
Just Vocab Malone at YouTube, from YouTube.
Just Vocab Malone, YouTube, Vocab Malone, Twitter, Vocab Malone, Instagram, Vocab Malone, Facebook. Find him there. So what we're gonna do right now, okay? We're gonna have a nice, quick interview. Then after the interview is finished, we're gonna do some quick hot seat, hot fire rounds. We've got different people from different persuasions, different points of view that'll be coming on, asking Vocab Malone some questions, getting involved with some form of dialogue, discussion. And then if we can get it heated, I want to turn it up a little bit. I'm just going to turn off the AC, turn up the heater, and then let's get it hot. That's my aim today. So Family Tree, if you're tuned in right now, do me a massive favor by hitting the like button, okay? And then sharing this wherever you can share it and letting everybody know that we're live right now. Vocab Malone in the studio, Titans TV. Let's go, baby. Let's go. So, Vocab.
Yes, sir.
You are down in the UK. Like, this isn't the first time you've been in the UK, but you're down and you've been down for a couple of weeks. Tell us, what have you been doing?
Came out here for 2 different conferences that were at various local churches that are designed to help Christians be able to talk primarily with Muslims. And then I always got to have a side quest. My side quest is to go find some Hebrew Israelites.
Yes.
I went to Speaker's Corner twice as well.
Yes.
Did a couple interviews.
Okay. But I want to know, you know what I want to know? I want to know about the NAPC conference. Let us know, because we had some big names coming down to that. They came down. A few individuals did several presentations. Did you do a presentation?
I did 2 at the first one and 1 at the second, yeah.
All right, tell me. Come on, enlighten us.
Sure.
Let's get inflamed. Let's turn up the fire, because right now, this is going to be exclusive content because it hasn't dropped yet on the YouTube streets. It hasn't dropped yet. So let us know.
I did it on anti-blackness in Islam.
Jeez! Hey, Muslims in the building. Oh man, let's go.
Wish you would ask that before the show.
Yeah.
That way they would have already known. And then the other one was using the book of Acts, which is right out of the Gospels, as a model for evangelism.
Yep.
And so giving it sort of the green light to be able to talk to Muslims in any public place, because when you see the apostles' activity, they're talking to people in any public place they can. Yeah. Sometimes even going into synagogues. Now, I'm not advocating going into a mosque or something. That's not what the parallel is about. So I just went through the passages and see how they did it, and the idea is try to imitate that, basically.
Yeah, okay.
Those are the 2 main things I did. I did some other smaller things, but that was the 2 main things.
And what would be your top 3 presentations at the NAPC?
Top 3. Last year I did one on Gnostic sources in the Quran. Thought that went well.
I love that, but I'm saying, I know you're bigging up your ego, but I'm saying everybody else is like...
You're saying, okay, other guys. Okay, this is not my favorite in the sense of I'm like, yeah. It's more just like food for thought. Jay Smith does these historical critiques in which he basically implies Muhammad didn't exist. I don't agree. But the reason why it's food for thought is it enables us to think about the validity of sources that have not always been really skeptically or even sometimes scholastically looked at. So I like the conversation. I totally disagree with the conclusions. I don't even think it's possible. So I'm not like, I don't know. No, I don't think it's possible. But I like the talk because I think there's some important discussion to be had in there. So I say that one for that, and he does a variation of that frequently. This one's going to be controversial, but it's informative to me as an outsider. Hearing about what they term as, I'm an outsider, so I didn't come up with this, the Islamization of Britain.
Ooh, yeah, that's
I find
a hot
it
topic right now.
Yeah, and I could tell when I'm there because I'm like, whoa, and I'm kind of more listening, at those points.
Okay.
But those are two that are pretty important that I really tune into. And then the third one will be my own Gnostic sources in the Quran.
Yeah. Okay, I need you to. Ooh, okay. Drop me a couple. I can see it already. I'm looking at Infancy Gospel of Thomas.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
I'm seeing that in there. What other sources?
The idea of Jesus not dying on the cross, that one is more tangential. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas is sort of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But there are Gnostic Gospels that have these odd ideas like this, the Gospel of Peter. Jesus is on the cross and people are crying, but Christ is over here laughing.
Oh, yes.
Saying, why do you laugh? That's not me. Here I am. And so you see these versions. Now they have a worldview that puts them in that place that's different than what the Quranic reasons seem to be there implied, or perhaps the larger Islamic theology around this idea. But there's other potential lines as well. That'd be one that I would probably bring out.
Cool. I'll do a little pushback, I don't know. This is my own thoughts. I don't think the Quran is even going down those lines. I think it's the tafsir, so the commentaries, put that into the text.
You mean Surah 157?
Yes.
You think Jesus did die on a cross?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Oh.
But that's a story for another day. That's a story for another day because,
well, you and I are going to agree on that one, but aren't you an atheist?
No. See, this is another thing.
Aren't you an agnostic?
This is another thing.
Aren't you a Kalamicist?
Yes, there you go.
So you're a self-idolater then?
Something like that. Like that. No.
Classic narcissist.
I saw something that one of the good brothers dropped, and he's like, "No," and I was like, "All right, cool. Let me just relax your mind a little bit," because I always say I've got atheistic tendencies.
That's what I pick up on.
Yes, and I'm like, okay, but are you not asking what do you mean by that, Kalam?
You want to take over a country and murder everyone in it? Just that's a joke. You said atheistic tendencies.
Yes, atheistic tendencies.
Because that's what they do when they get in power. From Mao Zedong to Stalin to Lenin.
I'm like, listen, it just simply means that I am very skeptical of religious claims. That's all. I utilize critical thinking. That is it seems to be atheistic. It's not atheistic, but it just seems to be atheistic. That's what I mean by that.
I would challenge you and say that atheistic thinking is not synonymous with critical thinking because atheists have no basis in their own worldview for critical thinking because they can't explain the laws of logic. Because the laws of logic are not material, they're eternal, they're immutable, they're universal, they're invisible. They don't match anything in the atheistic worldview.
Yeah.
So where do they come from? I would say they're a reflection of the mind of God. The atheist says, they're just always here. They're just a brute fact of the universe.
Yeah.
So they mock us for saying, everything you guys say, you just say God did it. You ask them fundamental baseline questions about metaphysics, you know what they say? I don't know. So pick which 3 words you want. And they think that atheism explains more? I don't think so.
Jeez, God did it? Oh, I don't know. I like that. Allahu Alam. Allahu Alam. All right, cool. So I want to push this forward, though. Because I think and this is touching on me a little bit, because I know my Kemetic community.
Pause.
Big pause. The Kemetic community is going to get at me if I don't address these things, okay? Because I self-identify, okay, as a person of the Kemetic community-ish.
Yeah.
There's a big ish there because I don't agree with the Kemetic community and what they get up to. I just simply say I like Kemetic philosophy. That's me. I deal with Kemetic philosophy. If you say, oh, Kemetic religion, no. I always say I'm a cultural Christian. Okay, but I like Kemetic philosophy. Just the same way I like Greek philosophy, I like Kemetic philosophy.
So you're a nice guy, but hella confused.
Nope.
That's what I'm picking up here.
Nope. Because, Christians, they utilize, imagine that. Christians utilize, Aristotelian logic. And like, does that make you a Greekicist?
No, because
You just
Aristotle,
like that philosophy, that way of thinking.
Aristotle is formalizing in words laws that already exist. So it's pre-Aristotelian, the laws of logic. You see what I'm saying? He's formalizing them,
Okay,
and then
yeah.
people are building on that work. But he doesn't think he's inventing them. He's discovering them, which implies they're already there.
Yeah.
So I understand why someone would say that, but I would say it's not using Aristotle's logic per se. It's Aristotle's talking about the logic inherent in the universe because it's an orderly, rationally designed universe, including the laws of logic which govern proper thinking.
Yeah.
And so if we're using critical thinking, it's not because of Aristotle, but Aristotle made in the image of God can also discover what's in the universe. It's ordered, which again, paganism has no explanation for why the universe is ordered. In fact, what's the big fight in Egypt? Keep out the chaos. So they always have chaos and order. Our story is it's inherently ordered. The disorder comes because of sin. And that's the real disagreement with most systems, whether it be Islam or Gnosticism or atheism, the problem of sin and what to do about it.
Definitely. So, but I want to hold you onto the Kemet right now. I want to hold you on that, okay? So I want to know, what is your major pet peeve with Kemet?
Peeve with Kemet. Honestly, sometimes I don't even know what Kemet is if we're talking about modern practitioners, because I don't find most of them to be faithful to what the ancient religion actually appears to be.
I agree.
Now, there's another question. What is the ancient religion? Are we talking about one certain dynasty? Are we talking about one certain city? What exactly is it? It's not a monolithic thing. It almost seems like a way to kind of just take a smorgasbord of anything that came out of Egypt over thousands of years and say, I believe that. But then you start talking to a practitioner about what they believe about it. Here's what you get. Those gods didn't really exist. They're avatars for intellectual thought waves, which are describing patterns in the universe.
You're killing me. You're killing me. You're killing me.
Or, yeah, they really existed, but those gods are actually aliens. They're describing superpowered beings. We might think of gods, but they're not.
Yeah.
Like the guy Tahuti that plays with the snake when he does debates.
Yep.
Every now and then you'll meet one who thinks they're real. Super rare.
Yeah.
Maybe Jabari, but I'm not sure if he even fully believes in the gods are real. But he's the closest I find to seem to be like a true believer, because he walks around doing what he calls blessings, but look like magic spells, and has a special stick and wears special colors to draw upon certain energies from the gods. That seems somewhat legitimately superstitious, and by the legitimate, I'm saying like the Egyptians were, them and their cats.
See, I know. Hey, listen, Kemetics, yeah. I need you guys to come on in, right, and defend the Kemetic religion, because I can't. I know I can't, because I'm not in the same boat as you. But I definitely want you guys to come on in, okay? But what about Shaka Ahmos?
Fascinating individual. Fascinating, seriously. He invited me into his house in Harlem. So to me, I always sort of owe a debt of gratitude, because that's real to me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm in his house talking to him.
Yes.
Yeah, he gets passionate, and yeah,
Very passionate.
But the thing is, if you can put up with it when he's right next to you and you endure, I think he has respect for you by the end.
Yeah.
I think that's what happened there.
Yeah.
I think. He does know a lot of interesting certain things, but he gets a lot of stuff that's fundamental wrong, and he can give good speeches. If he would just be a little bit better of a listener, we could have great dialogues. Yeah. Because he is intelligent, but he's not always interested in listening. He'll hear a word and think he knows what you're saying, but it's like, whoa, and then he'll make a whole speech on it. It's like, bro, that's not even what I say. So I like Shaka Atmos.
Yeah.
Find him interesting and willing to study, and it's like he's ever changing, like he's learning to an extent.
Yep.
But I just want him to be a little bit better listener. Like maybe we all could be. That's not a personal affront to him, you know.
That was the best conversation I've heard from a Kemetic practitioner with an other group, i.e. a Christian.
Good.
Yours with Jabari, yeah, I didn't rate that. The other ones, but yours and Shaka, there were so many different things
Yeah.
I was learning in that conversation. You was bringing out the technology, the different media. We've got books here, now can travel and this and that. I'm like, what? Oh my God. Okay, cool. But let me pull you up on this one though. Let me pull you up on this because I didn't like it. Because you dropped a little sly comment on Shaka. It was like, yeah. No, it was mainly touching on Sarnetta. It's like, yeah.
Pause.
Why for that? Why for that? Hey, you've been in London too long.
Sorry.
You've been in London too long. But it was to do with being made in the image of God. And then he was like, yeah, Sarnetta believes that he came from a fish. And I was like, hold on, but you do realize that ancient Egyptian literature has that 2000 plus BCE that they were created in the image of God.
Oh, I don't consider Sarnetta a Kemeticist, though.
No. But you're talking to Shaka, but then you dropped a slight
No.
comment
When
at
I
him.
said came from a fish, I was talking to Sarnetta.
Yeah.
I think the idea of the image of God in relationship to Kemetic theology is much more convoluted than that's what they thought. Here's why. I have seen some evidence that it's reserved only for royalty.
Yeah.
Kings are made in the image of God. I don't know about the average Egyptian walking down the street. They're all made in the image of God?
No,
Not so certain.
The average Egyptian was made in the image of God. It was only in the 13th dynasty that it was specific to the kings.
Oh.
Yeah.
So which one is it?
So the original is that they're all made in the image of God.
So the original one because it's the earliest?
Because of the earliest, the
Okay.
earliest one.
So then all of our Egyptian forms of religion should only be imitating the earliest forms, correct?
Repeat that again.
If a person's practicing Kemet, then based on what you said, they should only be practicing the early forms, the earliest forms, because that's the original, right?
No.
Okay, but you just said image of God got changed over here. Back here, the original one, which is the right one, that's the one we should be looking at. Well, wouldn't that go across the board?
It's a very good question. Which one should one follow? Personally, I'm not judgmental, so you can follow whatever you like. But how do you judge which is the right one, which is the wrong one? And I personally think we'll have to wait a little bit till this nascent Kemetic community grows a bit older. And like Christianity, like Islam, where they've grown so strong, they've realized that there is creedal differences amongst one another. They split off, they create their own groups, they create their own creedal statements. And then at that moment in time, do I think it's only fair that we can actually start looking to see who is right and who is wrong. But yeah, that's my thought. Go ahead.
Well, I'm glad we're back. I would say that I don't know if that's going to happen because I don't see neo-Kemeticism really growing. It's too idiosyncratic. You have like internet influencers and they hold their own versions and they can't get along with each other. Jabari's the only person I know in the sort of neo-Kemetic who he's setting up other houses. In fact, the first location I'm aware of that they set up outside of New York is in Phoenix.
Yeah.
So when they first opened, they did a grand opening. I said, is it okay if I come observe? I'm not going to worship if that's happening.
Yeah.
And they let me. They were nice. They were friendly about it, which I appreciated. But I don't know who else is doing anything like that. So, man, I hate to say it this way, but what really is the future in the Kemetic religion as it stands now?
Yeah.
Because most of authentic Egyptians are Muslims or Copts. But in America, you have this neo-Kemeticism, and it's in a couple other places like London, but annual gatherings, like what's happening? You know, is there scholars who are trying to write position papers for it, leaders over, I just don't see anything like that. There's no, and people may say, we don't need that. At the end of the day, for anything in the world to be stable, it has to have institutions of some sort.
Yeah.
Institutions don't just mean buildings. They mean some kind of standards that are created, some kind of intellectual, moral, ethical leadership, and where is that forthcoming? I mean, we saw Poe Light. My sense of what he did is he sort of used it as a ladder to get on the roof, and then he got on the roof and then kicked down the ladder.
Yes.
So that's not going to help anybody as far as that goes. So what? I don't know. Because you said in the future as we go on, and I was thinking, like other religions, Kemet's really old already. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even ancient Kemet, I don't know how creedal based it was. It seemed to be more ritualistic based from what I can discern. So what is the future? I'm genuinely, what do you think? I don't know.
I think you're right. I personally don't see a future for the Kemetic movement. Let's call it the Kemetic movement. I don't see a future for it. The best scholars who we have is Browder, Theophile Benga, Mwala Karenga. But they're American, so I don't see their works being pushed over here in the UK. I don't see they have any institutions over here in the UK, any schools over here in the UK where you could learn something, to be honest with you. Because I never came up, when I got introduced to Kemet, it was never via the Afro-American community version of Kemeticism. It's like, I never got it from that. I was just interested as a child, growing up, we're in school, we're learning, Egyptian, Greek, Roman, stuff, and so forth and so forth. I'm like, oh, cool. Let me actually dig more into the ancient Egyptians. That's where I came up. I came up on the learning it via university level scholarship and so forth, and learning the language via that means and other little things. So I never came up from that side of things. And when I came over and I'm like, oh, there's actually a community that has the same interests as me. But them, I just don't see. I don't know. I don't see it taking off here in the UK, full stop. And I always say I would never tell anybody or try to preach Kemeticism or get anybody to convert to Kemeticism, because you have to be a special individual like myself. Yeah? And that specialness is not good. It's not good, by the way. Yeah, don't get me twisted. That specialness is not good. It takes a special type of individual that says, 700 characters, i.e. Characters, let's say alphabets, basically. You have to memorize that. And then you have to be able to read that. And then it's a dead language. It's died over 1,000 years ago. It's dead. It takes a special type of individual to actually want to learn that information and actually, gain wisdom from that type of information. So I would never push that to anybody. And I think it's too much of a difficult ask for anybody to say, I will leave my 5 pillars in Islam to convert to Kemeticism. I just don't see it.
It's interesting you bring up Islam in regards to Kemeticism. Do you think that Kemeticism can properly be understood as a polytheistic religion?
I think some people view it as a polytheistic religion. In terms of theology, I think it's a panentheistic religion.
So do you think that it properly practiced engages in idolatry?
It depends on what you mean by idolatry. In terms of maybe Christian version of idolatry, quite possibly.
Or Islamic?
Or Islamic, quite possibly. But then at the same time, maybe not. And why do I say maybe not? Because within side of Christianity, you have statues up. It doesn't mean that those statues are idols because they're there, they're present. So what makes an idol an idol? For example, the black stone in the Kaaba is something that people pray towards, touch, believe that it will forgive their sins, etc. But Muslims would say, no, we're not idol worshippers. This isn't an idol. So it all depends on your definition of what an idol is, I would say. From most probably a biblical standpoint, they will say any graven images basically is an idol. And if that's the standards of what an idol is, I would say, yeah, definitely. Kemet is an idol religion because everything is to do with carved pictures, things that you see inside of nature.
Well, in ancient Kemet, there was priests of different gods, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that would seem to make it polytheistic by definition, regardless if they had statues or not. If If you have a priest for this god, priest class for this god. Do you see what I'm saying?
Because I wouldn't, because I don't see it like that. It's like saying, there is, for example, the Holy Spirit, the Word of God, and the Father. And all three, according to Trinity, they're all one God, all different gods, but they're all one. It's the same thing in Kemet. They may be individualized, but they're all one God.
If that's the case, how do they marry each other and kill each other and have sex with each other?
Again, that's a different culture. A different culture has a different understanding of things. Whereas for us over here in the West, we might see it as, it's different. But then one will say, okay, how does a father have a child by himself to have a son? And they'll say that has to be polytheistic. So it all depends on the cultural understanding, I would say.
Like you've seen this is not a good facsimile, but where you got the falcon up there and she's doing something like making a phallus for her dead half-brother husband.
Yep.
And then they're having some kind of sexual relation. So it's like necrophilia, but also bestiality, but also incest. You know what I mean? But then what I'm saying by that is if they're all one, how do you have that situation happen? Because I don't see how they're all one if they're doing that with each other. And especially because ancient Kemet, some of the gods are described to have semen. Mm-hmm. In fact, one of them put it in the lettuce at a gathering, which is kind of odd. Another one seemed to swallow his own semen and spit it out to create things. Mm-hmm. But he's creating gods in the process. So they don't seem like they're all one. In fact, it seems like they're fighting each other, marrying each other, having sex with each other. But you're saying they're one. Would they say they're one?
I would say if you go into ancient Egyptian literature, they would tell you that all three gods are one, or all gods are one. That's literally, I wish I had books up right now to kind of show you Kemetic literature. But they literally have it all as one God. Let's just say, for example, right? You have Ra. Let's just say he is the number one deity, the God, right? And then he gives birth to Shu and Tefnut. And then Shu and Tefnut give birth to Gebernut. And then Gebernut gives birth to Asaraset and so forth and so forth. But all of those gods are just, how can I put it? Manifestation of that one deity.
What's the one deity?
Ra.
So would you say everything is Ra?
No. That wouldn't make any sense. Everything isn't Ra.
Well, like on Hinduism, they would have everything is.
No. So how can I put it? From them, it would be the essence. Let's say the essence, the source, is God.
Ra.
But in order for God, whereas in Christianity, it's ex nihilo, created from nothing.
Yeah.
Whereas from Kemetic philosophy, it's like everything is created out of the deity rather than it being created out of nothing.
So
therefore, everything goes back to that one deity.
Who is Ra?
Who is Ra.
So has Ra eternally existed?
Ra has always been in existence in some form, but he is only Ra once he starts to create.
What's he before that?
He was a seed of possibilities and potentiality. And until he rises, that's when he becomes Ra.
So he went from a seed to Ra when he started creating?
So let's do it from the mythology. The mythology states that there is the eternal waters of Nun. Okay? And then there is a seed or a circlet in it, which is Ra. But he's not Ra yet because he hasn't created, he hasn't manifested. Once he steps up above the waters and starts manifesting, then he is Ra.
So the eternal waters of Nun, what are they?
Eternal waters of Nun would be existence, the essence, the source, just complete energy. Let's just use the energy as a term.
So Nun, who's that?
Nun is, as I said, existence.
So not an individual.
No.
So why isn't Nun God then? Why is Ra if Ra is?
Because the definition of God in that term would be the one who causes things to come into existence, the first cause.
So he's a creator, but he may not necessarily be God.
So it depends on what you mean by God.
Why wouldn't Nun be God if Nun exists prior to Ra?
Because Nun, there is nothing, there is no movement until Ra moves.
Then how do you get the seed?
Ra is the seed. He's the circle in the water.
But did Noon make the seed be in the water?
The seed, the seed is part of the water.
So Ra's part of Noon.
So Ra is part of Nun until he comes and becomes something, does something. Then he is Ra.
So, because that's a problem where you have, at least to me, where you have Ra's the god in the system, but he seems contingent. So in philosophy, they talk about contingent beings. Contingent being is a fancy way to say a dependent being. So I'm clearly dependent because there was a time when I didn't exist. I would be dependent on my parents' activity, grandma, go back, every person in this room to exist. And since you're contingent, you're dependent upon other factors. The factors you're dependent upon can't be dependent upon you because they're prior to you. So we're all contingent beings. Ra sounds like a contingent being regarding Noon, but a contingent being by definition doesn't seem to be able to match characteristics of God because they're not properly eternal and they're changing. So they're mutable. They're not immutable. So you have a shifting God. But if God is going to be the ground and foundation of all reality, if he himself is contingent and mutable, how's he the foundation for all reality?
So I would say first that because we're using God, I think you may have come with a Christian understanding of God versus their understanding of God. It's perfectly fine that it could be contingent on something else because for them, everything belongs within inside of a, a constellation. Nothing is by itself. There is always a constellation of other deities together. That makes any sense?
Yeah.
There is always something else.
So I hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
but what I would see that as is a recognition that the system is inherently illogical.
Okay, let me hear that.
So if you're saying you're using it a certain way, but they basically have a system at root that seems to violate all kinds of laws, the law of identity, law of non-contradiction. So you have this being who he himself is contingent, but yet he's a foundation for other things. But it doesn't. There's problems there. So to me, it seems like illogical at the root. Because how do you explain reality with a being that's contingent and changes?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So, God, does he exist?
Yes.
Cool. Did existence come first or did God come first?
God, by definition, is self-existent. And the beautiful thing about that is he reveals that when he gives his covenant name. The best example most people know of is in Exodus 3. When he says, go into Kemet, Yahweh tells Moses, go into Kemet. He says, who am I going to say sent me? He's asking for the divine covenant name. He understands he's talking to God, the creator. And he says a form of what we now use as Yahweh, where he says, I am that I am. And so by the very name of the God of the Bible is self-existence. There's really no God like that I'm aware of within any of these pagan, polytheistic, idolatrous. I understand those are invectives, words that might be understood to be an insult, but I'm just trying to describe them as I understand them, not necessarily insult practitioners or anything. They don't seem to have that type of God, so you lack a true source. So it's interesting because you have, in these other systems, God of. So God of the harvest, God of love, God of the moon, God of the sun. It's almost like they're delegated out for these little spheres that they have. And you may have one who's more powerful. The sun god's pretty powerful, but he's not all powerful. Yet when you get to the scriptures, you see immediately he says, I am that I am. I be, I is. His very nature is self-existence. So he doesn't do and this is why I mentioned the law of non-contradiction. Something that isn't there can't create. So the self can't create the self, but you have self-created gods in these systems. Like there's one God, I think this might be in Assyrian literature, who sneezed and created himself. But how is that? There's no I to make the I.
It's illogical.
So
That's illogical.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So you have some real radical problems with this sort of A&E cosmogony, especially the idea of the birth of gods. But when you turn to the Hebrew scriptures, you don't see anything like that. You have this God who says, I am that I am. That's the essence of who I am. So it's interesting. His essence is not over some sphere of nature. It's that he always exists. The technical name for that, what theologians use, it's a term called aseity, A-S-E-I-T-Y. If you say the aseity of God, you're essentially just saying the eternality or the self-existence of God. And it's interesting because it doesn't seem like the natural world thought of that, because there's nothing in the natural world that's like that. Meaning, it seems it's based upon the idea of revelation. God reveals himself to his creatures. Here's how I am. But we couldn't make that up. If you notice, the stories of the gods are just supercharged superhumans. They birth, they love, they die, they come back, they get tricked, they get deceived. But when you come to the Hebrew scriptures, it's a God that no one could conceive of because he's eternal, always existed, not made in any way. And it's like, oh, that's different than anything else that exists. It seems like it's based upon revelation, not human reason based upon experience about what they already see in the natural world.
I don't even want to push, though. I don't want to push because it's not, as a host, it's not
Salt and Pepper said, push it good.
It's not, I just feel as though it's not my role to push. But I think that the things that you said, you've made mention of certain things. And I'm like, but that actually is part of the Hebrew plus the biblical scriptures.
What is?
You're saying about, giving birth, certain emotions. Like, God is very much so emotional. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing within inside of the scriptures. He's very much emotional. God angers. God has love. God has jealousy. All these things here. God has begotten a son. So it's like the things that you made mention of, like, these other pagan religions, it's also within inside of the Bible. And I'm not saying that makes the Bible false or wrong. I'm just saying it's there as well.
Well, the idea of emotions is sort of a different thing. I didn't necessarily bring that up, but so there's a debate about what's sometimes called the impassibility of God. Does God have emotions properly understood? Because what I would contend is there's sort of an anthropomorphizing so we can understand who God is, but not that he himself is anthropomorphic. So he'll be described as, for example, the Hebrew scriptures paint a God who's invisible, but yet it'll say when he's angry in the Hebrew, it'll say his nostrils flare up. What is that explaining? It's a poetic way to say he's angry at. Now, why is he angry at? Fill in the blank of what he's angry at. Because this thing that he's angry at violates his character. Well, why does that matter? Because his character is flawless and perfect. So him reacting to this is not a change in him. It's the response of what a holy God would always do in regards to this. For example, murdering your brother, Cain and Abel. He's always angry at that type of action. So God himself, though, is the same. Scripture even says he's the same yesterday, today, forever. But his response is based upon what's happening, but it's based upon an unchangeable character. And the idea of birth, Jesus is not coming into existence as far as his actual existence at Bethlehem. That's not the idea. The idea is he's eternally existed prior to his birth. And he even says things, now we could debate about if that's true. Jesus himself said things like before Abraham was, and then he uses the Greek ego eimi, which is I am, John 8:58. And you see Matthew pointing to prophecies in Isaiah that indicate he was already present. And Jesus says something very strange. He says, I was sent by the Father. And he even says, I have come down from heaven. So these types of now people may say, oh, he's just quoting Bible, but it's important to at least understand the Christology of Jesus himself, so to speak. So he's not now just existing in the sense he didn't have a prior existence, because John 1:1 says, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. So the idea there is face-to-face in the Greek when you see it's prostheos. So he always was there. But you're saying he's like the Egyptian gods or something like that?
I am not saying that Jesus is like the Egyptian gods. I'm never going to say that. I'm saying that what you made mention of in your statement earlier on about emotions, about giving birth and so forth, you were saying that was about the pagan deities, but I'm saying all those things exist within inside of the Bible as well. And I don't know, I think that Jesus did come into existence. Anytime that something takes place on this plane, that is a point of you've entered into time and space now.
That's true.
But
that's the incarnation. What you just
I would
said
say
there.
definitely
Yes.
to you, the logos, and I like to separate Jesus from the logos because I don't think that the two are the same things.
No.
The logos is definitely pre-existing. The logos definitely is in heaven and so forth. But the moment that it comes into earth, that is a new creation. That's something new that's taken place, i.e. the physical human being, Jesus, that's something new. The logos that resides within inside of him, or is him, or merge, I don't know, whatever you want to say, yeah, that's pre-existence. But the moment that it comes into being, that's something definitely new.
Well, you're saying you separate the logos from Jesus, but later on, after those verses we mentioned, verse 14, and the word became flesh, dwelt among us, saw his glory, glorious of the only Son from the Father. So it's the,
You said
it's
it
the same.
became flesh. That means that is something new. That wasn't
Took on human nature.
Yes, that's something completely new. So I would separate. That's what I'm saying. I'll separate Jesus from the logos. The logos is pre-existing, and then when he becomes flesh, that is a new form of creation that's taken place.
But this is showing you that Jesus is the logos, not that it's separate. But you're saying it is separate?
It has to be separate because you have two natures. You have
Well, that's
the
true.
divine nature, and then you have the human nature.
The divine took on a human
If you say
nature, yeah.
The human nature can't possibly be, pre-existing, can it? It has to be something that is only part of this plane,
Now that's
material plane.
yeah. The last thing you said is what the incarnation teaches, which
And I don't think it's wrong. what
Our
I'm saying,
Muslim friends
because,
would also disagree with that.
but Jesus is the new creation. He's the new Adam. So I don't think we have a disagreement, really.
No, but that's not saying that he came into existence at Bethlehem. Now, certainly the incarnation begins with the virgin conception, no doubt about that. But all it's being understood is the divine logos takes on a human nature. So the incarnation is a new thing in time and space, but you have the logos, who is identified as Jesus in 1:14, always has existed. But all of that's still different than Egyptian mythology. It's radically different. I mean,
100% is definitely different. And I'm against Kemetics when I hear them say and try to make the parallels with Jesus and other Kemetic deities. I'm like, you don't need to do that. Like leave the Hebrews, leave the Christians alone. They have their own thing. It's a new thing. They've created that. That can be found and backed up via the Bible. You don't need to go into Kemet of 2,000 years ago to find it. It's literally a Hebrew religion. Christianity is birthed out of the Hebrew religion. It didn't need to come from Kemet, and I don't think it does.
right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you and Jabari could have a good conversation there.
Yeah, definitely. I disagree with him vehemently on that one. Vocab, I wish I had saw your message earlier on Facebook. I don't know why I haven't been using Facebook as often as I should have been, because we could have done some other shows during the daytime. But we did this, especially for my American audience. You guys are up right now, but it's almost 2 a.m. in the morning, okay? And some of us are going to be in trouble with their other half. Yeah, some of us have got work, at 9 a.m. in the morning as well. And yeah. It's one of those ones. So I apologize, family, that we couldn't do some more with you guys. I know that my Hebrew brothers, my ISUPK brothers, definitely wanted to get on, definitely wanted to have a conversation. Brother Vocab brought up a couple of topics that they seemed that they were very much so interested in having a dialogue with you on them. I won't mention it now, but yeah, definitely we'll do something like this again in the future.